Apologies for earlier this week. I did make a broadcast just the other day, but unfortunately, due to a cock up by me, I pressed two buttons at once and ended up deleting it, or at least getting rid of it from upload. So it's missing. So I thought I would actually replace it today with this show, and hopefully give you the information that was contained in the other day's program. Now, the first thing I wanted to say to you is that coming up in May is a great big independence event. Now, this event has been staged annually, every year now, by the Scottish Sovereignty Research Group, and is in fact their main conference of the year. It's being staged at the Carnegie Conference Centre in Dunfermline on the 16th to the 18th of May. So make a note in your diaries, 3 days. I think there are still tickets available. If you need to check the prices, as far as I remember, the ticket prices are still well under £30, so don't quote me on this, but the last time I looked, I think it was £25 for a ticket for the entire 3-day event. Now, during the conference, there are several big segments. Now, these big segments are split up over the 3 days, and in these they cover diverse topics, such as the politics of independence, gaining independence, what happens after you gained independence, how the new country should be set up, and there are various experts in all kinds of different important fields, including banking and commerce, politics, land use, renewable energy, you name it. There are experts in every single field, all of them talking about how Scotland can rebuild itself as a new state after it leaves the United Kingdom. So it's always worth going to these conferences. I went to the first one that was ever staged, and it was superb. And not just a happy talking shop, but a planning event where every expert and all the activists who really want to turn up and hear what has to be said get to plan how the country will be shaped, both before, during, and after independence. So well worth a visit if you can spare the time. So make a note in your diaries, the 16th till the 18th of May, the Scottish Sovereignty Research Group's annual conference at the Carnegie Conference Centre in Dunfermline. Now, having plugged all of that, let me move on to energy prices. Now, this is something which is probably the worst thing about living in the United Kingdom at the present time. Now, many of you will probably be aware that we pay at least some of the highest energy prices in Europe. But you probably didn't know that we are actually paying the highest energy prices in the world, bar none. There is no other country on the planet that pays as much for its energy as we do. The question is why? Why is it that our energy is so expensive? Now, particularly when Scotland is overproducing renewable energy. We manufacture enough energy for our own use, plus enough for about 25%, maybe more, of England's annual electricity usage, plus a bit extra. So why is it the energy is so expensive? Because most people would think, well, if we're manufacturing almost 100% of our electricity needs by renewable energy, which is basically free. It's coming from the wind and the tide and solar panels. It's coming to us at virtually no cost. And remember that the infrastructure for renewable energy is mature now, and that means that the wind turbine farms have been developed, they've been invested in, they've been built, and they've been operating for quite a long time, and by now they've probably paid themselves off again. So the costs of investment usually are returned within 11 years on something as big as that. So considering the wind energy is something like 30 years old at least, it's well into making a fortune for its owners. And a fortune is exactly what they're being permitted to charge. Now, who is it who sets the price cap on energy? Because it's not the energy producers themselves, it's the British government. And the British government, and I'm talking about lots of different ones here, going back through the last at least 2 Tory administrations before the current supposed Labour one, all 3 of them have allowed the energy regulator to set the price cap so high that the energy companies can pretty much charge whatever they like. And that's exactly what they're doing. And where's the money going? It's certainly not going back into the Scottish economy. it is basically going into the pockets of international investors, who are the people who are cleaning up on the profits taken by these companies, because their shareholders get a dividend of all the profits. Now, obviously, the United Kingdom does tax these corporations in the UK, but they don't tax them very much, and Scotland gets absolutely no royalties on any kilowatt hour of energy that it produces. So we get almost, in fact, no, I'm telling lies, we do get absolutely nothing for our energy. And that's something which needs to change, but it can't change while we're trapped in the United Kingdom. And that brings me to today's summit being staged by Mr. Swinney, the First Minister. Now, when I heard the word summit, I don't know about you, but the word summit usually means gathering together a whole lot of heads of state of other countries to talk about some very important international topic. But in this case, it appears to be a meeting between John Swinney and some other people that we don't really know. Nobody's actually been told who's been invited to the summit, but it certainly doesn't appear to be world leaders, at least not that I've heard anyway. And the venue for this meeting is, well, Glasgow, somewhere, but who knows where, and who knows when. There's not been any public information given on when this summit is being held at all, or who's been invited, or what is effectively going to be done at this summit, what's going to be agreed. It seems on the face of it, from Mr. Swinney's description, that he is holding this summit in order to discuss how to protect the values that Scottish people have. Now, he's talking about things like decency, democracy, the rule of law, all these kinds of things. And I can't really pin down exactly what this summit is supposed to achieve, because without knowing who is invited to it, or what the point of it is, and what exactly can be done after it has been held, is a mystery to me, because the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government has no powers to create legislation to protect these vital values that he has been espousing during his speeches. Now, it's well known that Scotland has different views from the rest of the UK, and generally we are more left of centre than most other parts of the UK, perhaps except for Wales, maybe Northern Ireland, who knows. I don't know enough about Northern Irish politics to say one way or the other. But the curious thing about this is it's so nebulous and vague as to be almost meaningless to the public. So why is it being done? Well, my guess is that it's being done so that Mr. Swinney can show that he's doing something. He's not doing anything about gaining independence, which is his primary reason for existing in the first place as a party politician, but instead he's planning to protect something which, to my mind at least, doesn't really seem to be under any kind of threat particularly. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the rise of the far right. Now, this is a label given to organisations like Nigel Farage's party Reform. Now, okay, Farage is far right, or certainly very right compared to a lot of Tory politicians. But on the other hand, is he a far right populist? I'm talking about a dictator type of character. If he were successful in the UK, would it really make much difference to Scotland? And I think the answer to that is probably not very much, because he's basically going to be elected by English voters. Scottish voters are not really going to vote for reform. There has been a slight rise in the numbers of people saying that they're going to vote for reform in Holyrood, but basically they're hoovering up former Tory voters and some disaffected Labour voters as well, and that's about it. So the demographics haven't actually changed. Reform's not going to get elected to Holyrood, and in fact the SNP's sort of hegemony here in Scotland looks fairly secure, and I don't see any particular reason to panic about reform. Even if they did win 1 or 2 seats, what difference would that make? So I'm not terribly worried about that, but I am much more worried about the economy. Now, Leah Gunn Barrett, who writes fairly regular blogs on X, posted a piece 2 days ago in which she quoted an article by another author, and this other author was comparing China and America, and asked the question, why is it that America and the West is failing when China isn't. And the conclusion drawn by, not Ms. Leah Barrett, but the person she was quoting, was that China never abandoned its utilities. It never privatized its vital utilities. It kept energy in public ownership, kept food production in public ownership. It kept everything of value that was needed for its people in public ownership. And that way, people in China can always afford their energy bills, their food bills, their house prices are lower, and so on and so on. And they still pay taxes in the traditional way. So what has China done? It's effectively, as the author says, it's created an industrial economy, an economy which is based on the growth of industries. And according to this particular article, there were over 70,000 businesses in a Chinese trade fair recently. 70,000 separate business entities putting their wares on display at this trade fair. Now, you'd be hard pushed to find 7,000 businesses in Scotland that could do the same and put their wares or their services on display. But China has made sure that its economy is based on its industries, and it's making it as easy as possible for those industries to operate by keeping energy prices down. Recently read a letter which had been sent by a businessman in the east of Scotland to his local authority, but mostly addressed to Mr. Swinney and also to the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer. And he was saying that he would love to expand his business in sort of mid-belt of Scotland, east of the central belt. He would love to employ more people, and he wanted to employ more people, but he couldn't afford it because he was being charged £4,000 a month for his energy bills. And he blamed this situation very fair and square on the current Labour administration, and they have done nothing at all to bring the energy companies back into line and to bring the cost of energy down far enough that businesses could afford to expand. And this really highlights the difference between the Chinese approach, which is basically based on keeping its people safe and making sure its businesses can grow and expand when they need to, and the Western system, which basically is designed to extract money out of the system without producing any produce at all as a result. This was what Thatcher wanted Britain to become, a service economy where nobody makes anything, but people make money, out of thin air essentially. And that money basically is extracted out of the UK economy and put into the pockets of big international investors who rake in their dividends every time their multinational corporation raises energy prices. So the problem that we face is that, as I've said many times before, we don't have an economy which is based on growth at all, despite what Keir Starmer says. It's based on extracting money out of the system without producing any value or any products as a result. And therefore businesses cannot grow. It's impossible for Keir Starmer's government to produce any growth at all, and the British economy, like the American economy, is going to continue to collapse as it goes on doing this. If you want to reinstate manufacturing, as Donald Trump says he wants to, then you have to do several things at once. But the primary thing you have to do is take back into ownership all the public utilities which support people, and more importantly, make it possible for businesses to expand. Anyway, that is it for today's program. Hope you've enjoyed it. I'll try not to accidentally delete it or cancel the upload this time. And of course, I'll be back again at regular intervals throughout the next few weeks. But don't forget to tune in tomorrow morning at 9:30 for Hodna Jacob with myself and Norrie Hunter from Caledon Radio, where we'll be presenting a pretty argumentative program tomorrow, based a lot on the conversations that Norrie and I have both had with ordinary people in the street about what they feel is wrong with the country and what needs to be done about it. We'll see you soon. Don't forget to keep the faith. Bye for now.